I still remember the sound of crystal shattering against hardwood as my mother's wine glass slipped from her trembling fingers. The 70-inch television screen behind me illuminated the dining room with damning evidence frame by frame, timestamp by timestamp. My sister Lily's face had gone from porcelain perfection to ash grey in seconds. Her mother-in-law, the impeccably dressed Mrs. O'Connor, stood frozen, with her hand pressed against her pearl necklace. Ryan Lily's golden boy husband stared at his wife like he'd never seen her before. And my parents, those paragons of suburban respectability, looked like their entire world was crumbling around their Pottery Barn dining set. "That's security footage from your own doorbell camera," I said quietly, my voice cutting through the shocked silence. "April 16th, the day you all claimed you never received our wedding invitation. But if you want to know how I got here, how a dutiful eldest daughter ended up scorching the earth at Thanksgiving dinner, you'll need to hear the whole story. So before we go any further, if you're enjoying this tale of family dysfunction and sweet, sweet justice, hit that like button and subscribe, because trust me, it only gets better from here. Drop a comment and tell me what you would have done in my situation. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I had always been the responsible one. The daughter who came home for every holiday, who remembered birthdays, who picked up the phone when Mom needed someone to complain to about her book club drama. For 30 years, I played my role perfectly. I was Kat, the environmental consultant with the modest apartment, and the practical car, the one who wore clothes from Target, while my younger sister Lily glided through life in designer labels and diamond studs. Lily had always been the favourite. It wasn't even a secret. Mum used to joke about it at dinner parties, her wine glass tilted at that particular angle that meant she'd had just enough to speak her truth. "Lily got all the beauty Kat got, all the brains," she'd say with a laugh that suggested which trait she valued more. Dad would nod along, his attention always drifting to wherever Lily held court, performing her latest triumph for an audience that never tired of applauding. When Lily announced her engagement to Ryan Mitchell 3 years ago, you would have thought she'd secured world peace. Ryan came from old money, the kind that whispers rather than shouts. He worked in corporate acquisitions, wore suits that cost more than my monthly rent, and had the kind of polished charm that made my parents practically glow with reflected prestige. The wedding was an event. 300 guests. A venue that looked like it belonged in a European palace. Lily in a dress that cost more than my car. I was a bridesmaid, naturally relegated to standing beside Lily's sorority sisters, while wearing a shade of peach that made me look like I had a terminal illness. Mum and Dad spent the entire reception introducing Lily and Ryan to everyone who mattered. I spent it making sure Aunt Margaret didn't drink too much and embarrass the family. That was my role, the helper, the background character in Lily's starring vehicle. I met Ethan 2 years ago at a sustainability conference in Portland. He was giving a keynote speech about green technology, and I was immediately struck by how he managed to make carbon footprint reduction sound revolutionary. He wore jeans and a blazer that had seen better days. His presentation slides had actual substance instead of corporate buzzwords. Afterward, we ended up at the same coffee shop, and he asked if the seat across from me was taken. We talked for 4 hours. He never once asked what I could do for him or tried to impress me with credentials. We discussed everything from renewable energy policy to our shared obsession with obscure documentaries. When he finally mentioned he ran a tech company, he did it so casually that I almost missed it. "Just a small startup," he said with a shrug. "We're trying to make data centers more energy efficient." I fell in love with him somewhere between his explanation of thermal cooling systems and his admission that he stress-baked sourdough bread. He was brilliant and kind and completely unpretentious. He loved me for exactly who I was, never once suggesting I needed to be more like anyone else. When he proposed 8 months later during a camping trip in the Cascades with a ring he'd designed himself, and no photographers in sight, I said yes before he finished asking. We planned a small wedding, intimate, just 75 people who actually mattered to us. A restored barn in wine country wildflowers, instead of imported roses, a string quartet playing indie folk covers. We kept it simple, meaningful. The kind of wedding where you could actually talk to your guests instead of performing for them. We sent out invitations 3 months in advance, beautiful cream-coloured cards with our names embossed in sage green. We sent one to my parents, of course, addressed by hand, stamped with extra postage because I'd included a handwritten note telling them how much it would mean to have them there. They never responded. Not a call, not a text, not even a passive-aggressive comment. Just silence. I told myself they were busy. Mum had her charity galas. Dad had his golf tournaments. Lily was probably demanding their attention for something as usual. I pushed down the hurt and focused on the joy. Ethan's parents were wonderful, treating me like I'd always been part of their family. My college roommate flew in from Boston to be my maid of honour. We had a perfect day surrounded by people who chose to be there. But it stung. God, it stung. Your parents missing your wedding isn't the kind of pain you can just file away. It sits in your chest like a stone, heavy and cold, especially when you're opening gifts and there's nothing from them. Not even a card. I called Mum, a week after the wedding, ready to hash it out, to demand an explanation. She answered on the 4th ring, distracted. "Oh, Kat, honey, I can't talk right now. Lily and I are meeting with her interior designer. Call you later." She never called back. Ethan told me to give it time, that maybe they needed space to process. He's an optimist, sees the best in people. It's one of the things I love about him, even when it makes me want to shake him. But I took his advice. I gave them space. I focused on settling into married life, on the quiet joy of building a home with someone who saw me, really saw me. We adopted a rescue dog. We started planning a garden. We were happy. I was happy, even with that stone still lodged in my chest. Then came the phone call about Thanksgiving. Mum, bright and cheerful, like nothing had happened. "Kat, darling, you'll come for Thanksgiving this year, won't you? Lily wants the whole family together. She's inviting Ryan's mother, Mrs. O'Connor. It's so important to make a good impression. You understand, don't you? Wear something nice. Maybe borrow something from Lily if you need to." I should have said no. Ethan wanted me to say no. But that old programming kicked in, the one that said good daughters show up, that family is family, that maybe this was an olive branch. So I said yes. I told Ethan we'd just make an appearance, eat some turkey and leave. 2 hours maximum. He squeezed my hand and agreed because he loves me and would follow me into hell if I asked. I should have known better the moment we arrived. Mum opened the door wearing a cocktail dress for a casual family dinner, her smile sharp and gleaming. "Oh, Kat, you're here. Good. Lily needs help in the kitchen." Not hello, not how are you, not we missed you. Just marching orders. Behind her, Dad barely looked up from arranging bottles in the bar cart he'd set up in the living room. The house looked like something from a magazine, spread all neutral tones and strategic lighting, the kind of carefully curated warmth that has no actual warmth in it. Lily swept into the foyer, wearing a cream cashmere sweater and enough diamonds to fund a small country. She looked me up and down, her smile freezing just slightly at my simple navy dress. "Oh, you wore that?" she said, managing to make it sound like I'd shown up in a garbage bag. "Well, never mind. Come help me with the appetizers. Mrs. O'Connor will be here soon and everything needs to be perfect. You know how important this is." I followed her into the kitchen, that gleaming temple of marble countertops and professional-grade appliances that Mum had renovated last year. Lily immediately handed me an apron. "Put this on, you'll get messy. I need you to finish the crudités and then set up the kids' table. Oh, and make sure the folding table doesn't wobble. Last time it was a disaster." "Kids' table?" I asked, looking around the empty kitchen. "There aren't any kids coming." Lily's smile turned sharp. "I know, but Mrs. O'Connor is used to very formal seating arrangements, and Mom thought it would be better to have a separate table for, overflow." She waved her hand vaguely. "You and Ethan won't mind. It's more casual anyway. You guys are so laid back." The kids' table. In American suburbia, making adults sit at the kids' table is the ultimate insult, a public declaration that you're not important enough for the main event. I felt my face flush hot, but I swallowed the anger. 2 hours, I reminded myself. Just 2 hours. I found Ethan in the living room, standing awkwardly near the window, while Dad and Ryan discussed golf handicaps and market portfolios. Neither of them had acknowledged Ethan beyond a brief handshake when we arrived. Ethan, in his typical style, wore dark jeans and a nice button-down, comfortable but presentable. Next to Ryan's three-piece suit and Dad's country club blazer, he might as well have been invisible. When I caught his eye, he gave me a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He knew. He knew exactly what this was going to be. Mrs. O'Connor arrived in a town car, dressed like she was attending a state dinner. She was a tall woman with silver hair styled into submission and jewellery that probably required its own insurance policy. Mum and Dad practically tripped over themselves, greeting her, ushering her to the place of honour at the head of the dining table. Lily appeared with a tray of champagne flutes, playing the perfect hostess, laughing at Mrs. O'Connor's observations about the neighbourhood with just the right amount of deference. When we sat down for dinner, I found myself and Ethan exiled to a small folding table near the kitchen door, the kind you'd buy at Costco for extra seating. Paper napkins instead of linen, IKEA plates instead of the china. We were literally separated from the main table by a decorative room divider, like we might contaminate the real guests. Through the gaps I could see Mom's table glowing with candlelight, the centrepiece an elaborate arrangement of fall flowers that probably cost $300. Lily and Ryan sat on either side of Mrs. O'Connor like courtiers flanking a queen. Ethan took my hand under the table. "We can leave," he whispered. "Right now, we can just go." I shook my head. I don't know why. Pride, maybe. Or that stubborn part of me that refused to give them the satisfaction of driving me away. 2 hours, I whispered back. I can survive anything for 2 hours. I was wrong. Dinner started with the usual small talk, the weather, the traffic, Mrs. O'Connor's flight from Connecticut. Then, Mom, emboldened by her second glass of wine, launched into her favourite topic. You know, Mrs. O'Connor, Lily's wedding was truly the event of the year. We had 300 guests, can you imagine? The venue was this gorgeous estate. It had been featured in Vogue. We spent months planning every detail. The flowers alone were $50,000, and Lily, oh, she was just radiant. It was everything a wedding should be. Mrs. O'Connor smiled indulgently. It sounds lovely. I do appreciate families who understand the importance of proper celebrations. Exactly. Mum continued, warming to her theme. Some people just don't understand that these events are investments in your future, in your social standing. They're not just parties, they're statements. Her eyes flicked toward me, brief but pointed. Kat is 30 now, and well, we keep hoping she'll settle down properly, but she's always been so focused on her little environmental projects. We worry, don't we, dear? She looked at Dad, who nodded obligingly. Very much so, Dad agreed. We'd like to see her establish herself, find someone suitable. Time isn't on her side anymore. I felt Ethan's hand tighten around mine. I stared at my plate at the dry turkey and lumpy mashed potatoes I'd been pushing around. They were talking about me like I wasn't there, or worse, like I was there and they wanted me to hear it. Lily, never one to miss an opportunity, joined in with her signature blend of concern and condescension. Oh, Kat, you know I'm always here for you, right? I know it must be hard watching me have everything you want. And I want you to know there's no shame in taking a different path. Not everyone finds their Ryan. Some people are just meant to be more independent. She paused, letting that sink in. And if you ever do decide to have a wedding, even if it's small, maybe at a community centre or something, I'd be happy to let you borrow my old decorations. No point in letting them go to waste. The stone in my chest grew teeth. I could feel them sharp and cutting, tearing at something vital. But I kept my face neutral, kept my mouth shut. Just an hour and a half left. I could do this. Mrs. O'Connor, either oblivious or deliberately stirring the pot, turned her attention toward our segregated corner. "And what about you, dear?" she called out, addressing me like I was staff. "Catherine, is it? What do you do for work?" Before I could answer, Dad cut in with a dismissive wave. "Oh, Kat does some environmental consulting work. It's rather unfocused, honestly. We've been concerned about her career trajectory. She's never quite found her footing. We worry she's becoming a bit set in her ways, harder to marry off, you know. Bit of an odd duck, our Kat." The main table erupted in polite laughter. Mrs. O'Connor tittered into her wine glass. Lily practically glowed with second-hand embarrassment on my behalf. Mum shook her head with exaggerated concern, the martyred mother of a disappointing daughter. I felt something crack inside me, a fissure in the foundation I'd built my entire life on. Ethan started to stand up. I could see the anger in his eyes, the protective fury that made me love him even more. But I put my hand on his arm. "Not yet," I whispered, "please." He sat back down, but his jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. We endured the main course in silence, while the main table's conversation flowed around us, through us, over us, like we were furniture. Then came dessert, and with it, the final insult. Lily produced a leather-bound photo album, the kind that costs a small fortune at specialty boutiques. "Mrs. O'Connor, I've been dying to show you our wedding photos. I had them professionally bound. Ryan Darling helped me clear some space." For the next 20 minutes I watched my sister narrate her perfect day for an enraptured audience. Every detail was examined and praised. The dress, the venue, the first dance, the cake. Page after page of Lily in her glory, Ryan at her side, my parents beaming with pride in every shot. There were photos of the ceremony, the reception, the send-off. There were even photos of the bridal suite tastefully decorated with rose petals and champagne. Then Lily turned to me, her smile razor-sharp. "Kat, you should look at these, really study them, in case you ever get a chance to plan your own wedding. Even if it has to be something smaller, more modest, you could learn a lot. I know you don't have the budget we had, but you could scale things down. Have it somewhere simple, maybe just family in someone's backyard. That can be nice too, right, Quaint?" Mum leaned over, adding her contribution. "Kat, I've been thinking. Maybe you should lower your standards a bit. Be more realistic. I could sign you up for one of those speed dating events, or maybe try a dating app. At your age, you can't afford to be too picky. Maybe if you made more of an effort with your appearance, wore some makeup, did something with your hair." She paused, examining me like I was a project that had gone wrong. "I mean this with love, sweetheart, but you've always been a bit rough around the edges. Not everyone can be a Lily. Some of us have to work harder. And if you'd just let me help you, let me set you up with some of my friends' sons, maybe we could find someone willing to take you on. I'm sure there's somebody out there who wouldn't mind your intensity." The words hit me like physical blows. Each one carefully calibrated to hurt, to diminish, to remind me of my place in this family hierarchy. I looked around the table at the faces I'd known my entire life. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. Ryan looked vaguely uncomfortable but said nothing. Mrs. O'Connor was nodding along sympathetically, probably thinking what a burden I must be to my poor parents. And Lily was watching me with barely concealed glee, waiting for me to break to cry, to run away like I always did. But something was different this time. Maybe it was having Ethan beside me, solid and real, a reminder that I had built a life outside this toxic bubble. Maybe it was finally reaching my limit. Maybe I was just tired of being the punching bag for their insecurities and cruelty. Whatever it was, I felt the stone in my chest transform. The teeth weren't tearing me apart anymore. They were turning outward. I stood up, slowly, deliberately. I picked up my wine glass and walked to the main table. The conversation faltered as I approached. I gently tapped my glass with a fork, the crystalline chime cutting through the awkward silence. Every eye in the room turned to me. "I want to thank you all for your concern about my future," I said, my voice steady and calm. "It's touching, really, how much you've been worrying about me, about my prospects, my career, my chances at ever finding love." I paused, letting the words hang there. Lily's smile was starting to falter. Mum looked confused, like the script was changing and she hadn't gotten the memo. "But here's the thing," I continued. "I don't actually need your advice about weddings, because I already had one, 6 months ago." The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the Persian rug. Mrs. O'Connor's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. Dad's face went red, then purple. Mum's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Lily recovered first, letting out a shrill laugh. "What? That's insane. Kat, are you having some kind of breakdown? What wedding? Who would even marry you?" "We didn't get any invitation. You're making this up because you're jealous. This is sad, really sad." "Ethan," I said calmly, not taking my eyes off my family, "could you connect to the TV, please?" My husband, bless him, was already pulling out his phone. Within seconds, he'd airplayed to the massive television mounted over the fireplace in the dining room. The screen flickered to life and suddenly everyone was staring at security camera footage. "This," I said, "is the Ring doorbell camera you installed last year, Mum. You said it was for security. Funny thing about cloud storage, it keeps everything." The footage showed the front porch of my parents' house on a sunny April afternoon. The timestamp read April 16th, 2:47 p.m. A silver Mercedes pulled into the driveway and out stepped Lily. She looked around quickly, then walked to the mailbox. She pulled out a stack of mail, rifling through it until she found what she was looking for. A cream-coloured envelope, elegantly addressed, our wedding invitation. On screen, Lily glanced over her shoulder one more time. Then methodically she tore the invitation into pieces, small pieces, confetti-sized pieces. She walked across the lawn to the neighbour's recycling bin and dumped them inside, pushing them down under newspapers so they wouldn't be visible. The room was frozen. Lily's face had gone from flushed to ashen. Ryan was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Mrs. O'Connor's expression was carved from ice. "But wait," I said, advancing to the next slide Ethan had prepared. "There's more." The screen changed to email correspondence. My mother's email account, but the typing pattern was wrong, the tone off. Messages sent to our wedding planner cancelling arrangements. Responses to our RSVP email declining on behalf of my parents. "Please take us off the list. The bride's family won't be attending this tacky affair. We don't support this union." The signature was my mother's, but the IP address in the header data was from Lily's home network. "She logged into your email, Mum," I explained conversationally. "Changed your password temporarily, sent these messages, then changed it back. You probably never even knew. Did you ever wonder why we never followed up when you didn't respond? Because we thought you had. We thought you'd made your choice." Mum's hand flew to her mouth. Dad just stared at the screen, his face unreadable. But I wasn't done. "And here's my personal favourite," I said, clicking to the next exhibit. Financial records, bank statements, credit card bills. "This is the deposit Lily made for her wedding band. Notice the date, April 21st. Notice the account it came from." I zoomed in on the details. The money had been transferred from an account in my name, an old joint account Lily and I had opened years ago when we were roommates in college. I'd forgotten about it, left a few $1,000s in there for emergencies. Lily hadn't forgotten. "She drained it," I said flatly. $15,000, my emergency fund, the money I'd been saving since I was 16. She used it to pay for her band, her centerpieces, her goddamn ice sculpture. And she did it the same week she destroyed my wedding invitation. Mrs. O'Connor stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood. Her face was a mask of barely controlled fury. "I have never," she said, her voice trembling with rage, "been so appalled in my entire life. To think that I have been associating with a family of this caliber. Ryan, we are leaving. Immediately." Ryan was staring at Lily like he'd never seen her before. "You told me that money came from your savings," he said slowly. "You said you'd been putting away money from your job. You lied to me. You stole from your sister and then lied to my face about it." Lily's mouth opened and closed. She looked at Mum, at Dad, desperate for them to save her. "I can explain," she started. "Kat, you have to understand. You didn't need that money. You were just going to waste it on some tiny wedding anyway. I was making it meaningful, and you weren't even talking to me about your wedding. You were shutting me out. So I just... You destroyed my invitation because you couldn't stand the idea of me being happy," I said, and my voice was so cold I barely recognised it. "You stole from me. You sabotaged my relationship with our parents. And you did it all because even my small, simple, happy wedding was a threat to you. Because God forbid anyone pay attention to me for 5 minutes. Dad finally found his voice. "Kat, this is. You're ruining Thanksgiving. You're embarrassing us in front of Mrs. O'Connor. Whatever happened between you and Lily, did you have to do this here? Now, couldn't you have just talked to us privately?" "Like you talked to me privately," I shot back. "Like you called me after not receiving an invitation to your daughter's wedding. Oh wait, you didn't. You never called. You never asked. You just assumed I was too pathetic, too unlovable, too weird to ever have a wedding. And that was fine with you. As long as Lily was happy, as long as you could show her off, I didn't matter." Mum started crying, reaching for me. "Baby, please, we didn't know. Lily, how could you do this, Kat, honey? We would have come if we'd known. We love you. You have to believe that." I stepped back from her outstretched hand. No, Mum, you wouldn't have. Because even if Lily hadn't stolen those invitations, you never once called me in those 6 months. Not once. Not to ask how I was, not to check in, nothing. Your silence told me everything I needed to know. You weren't kept from my wedding. You just didn't care enough to notice it was happening. The room erupted into chaos. Mrs. O'Connor was gathering her things. Ryan was pulling away from Lily as she tried to grab his arm. Mum was sobbing. Dad was yelling about respect and family loyalty. But I was done. I was so done. Ethan appeared at my side with our coats. He'd been watching everything from the doorway, ready to get me out the moment I needed it. I looked at my family one last time. Lily was crying now, mascara running down her face, pleading with Ryan. Mum was hyperventilating into a napkin. Dad just looked old and deflated. Mrs. O'Connor was on her phone, probably calling her driver. I hope this was worth it, I said to Lily. I hope the perfect wedding, the perfect photos, the perfect life was worth destroying any chance at having a real relationship with me. Kat, wait, Lily choked out. Please, we're family. You can't just leave. You're right, I said. We are family, and that makes what you did so much worse. Family is supposed to be the people who show up, who celebrate with you, who protect you. You did the opposite, you all did. I turned to my parents. And you taught her this. You taught her that appearance matters more than integrity. That status matters more than kindness. That I was less important because I didn't fit your definition of success. Well, congratulations. You raised exactly the daughter you wanted. I hope you're proud. Ethan and I walked out of that house and didn't look back. Behind us I could hear Mum calling my name. Dad shouting something about disrespect, Lily's sobs getting louder. We got into our car, the sensible Honda they'd always mocked, and Ethan started the engine. Where to? He asked quietly. Your parents' house, I said, where people actually want us. We drove through the suburban streets, past houses glowing with warm light and the promise of happy families. I didn't cry, not then. I felt hollowed out, but also strangely light, like I'd been carrying a weight for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. Ethan reached over and took my hand. I'm proud of you, he said. I know that wasn't easy. It should have been easier, I replied. It should have been easier to walk away from people who treat me like that. Why wasn't it? Because you loved them, he said simply. And you wanted them to love you back the right way. That's not weakness, Kat. That's being human. His parents' house was everything my family home wasn't. Smaller, cosier, with actual warmth instead of performed perfection. Ethan's mum opened the door with flour on her apron and genuine delight on her face. You're early, I'm so glad. I need someone to test these pies and tell me if I went overboard with the cinnamon. His dad was in the living room, football on the TV, actually watching it, instead of using it as background noise for business talk. Ethan's sister and her husband were there with their kids, who immediately dragged Ethan off to show him their new video game. Nobody asked me about my career prospects, or when I was planning to have children, or whether I'd finally figured out how to be acceptable. They just hugged me and handed me wine and made me laugh. That night, curled up in the guest room at the Vance house, I finally cried. Ethan held me while I grieved the family I'd wanted, the one I'd kept hoping would materialise, if I was just good enough, patient enough, understanding enough. He didn't tell me it would be okay, or that they'd come around. He just held me and let me break. The aftermath unfolded over the next few weeks like a slow-motion car crash. Ryan filed for divorce within a month. Turned out Mrs. O'Connor had been very serious about not associating with people who lacked integrity, and she made it clear that Ryan's career prospects at his firm would be much better if he distanced himself from the scandal. Plus, once Ryan started actually looking at their finances, he found other irregularities. Lily's shopping addiction, hidden credit cards, charges on his accounts he'd never approved. The theft from me was just the tip of a very ugly iceberg. Lily moved back in with my parents, who were suddenly dealing with the reality that their golden child wasn't so golden. My phone rang constantly for weeks, Mum crying and begging me to come home to forgive Lily to help fix things, Dad angry and accusing me of destroying the family over a grudge. Lily herself alternating between apologies and accusations, insisting I'd ruined her life, that I was cruel and vindictive, that a real sister would have handled this privately. I changed my number. I blocked them on social media. I told our extended family that I was setting boundaries and asked them to respect my choice not to engage. Most of them did. A few told me I was being too harsh, that family is family. I stopped talking to them too. Here's what I learnt in the months that followed. You can love someone and still refuse to let them hurt you. You can grieve a relationship while knowing you made the right choice ending it. And sometimes the family you choose is worth more than the family you're born into. Ethan and I took that belated honeymoon to the Maldives. We spent 2 weeks swimming in water so clear you could see straight to the bottom, eating meals that tasted like sunshine, sleeping in a bungalow on stilts over the ocean. We talked about our future, about the life we wanted to build together. No performance, no pretense, just us. I started therapy, unpacked 30 years of being the acceptable daughter, the one who made herself smaller so Lily could shine brighter. Learned about boundary setting and self-worth and the insidious nature of emotional manipulation. It wasn't easy. Some days I still wanted to call my mum, wanted to believe that this time would be different. But my therapist reminded me that people show you who they are through their actions, not their words. And my family had shown me quite clearly where I ranked in their priorities. 6 months after that Thanksgiving, I got a letter from Mom. Not an email, not a text, but an actual handwritten letter on her good stationery. She'd been in therapy too, she wrote. Dad had been resistant, but she'd insisted. They were starting to understand how their favouritism had damaged both their daughters, how they'd created a competition where there should have been support. She didn't ask me to forgive them. She said she understood if I never wanted to see them again. But if I ever did, they'd be there. Actually, they're not just physically present, but emotionally available. I haven't responded yet. Maybe I will someday, maybe I won't. That's the thing about setting boundaries, about choosing your own healing over other people's comfort. You get to decide what happens next. You get to decide if reconciliation is even something you want and under what terms. As for Lily, I heard through the grapevine that she's working retail now, living in a tiny apartment, trying to rebuild a life that doesn't revolve around Instagram perfect moments and designer labels. Part of me feels sad for her. Part of me thinks she's finally learning consequences. Mostly I just feel distant from the whole situation, like it happened to someone else. Ethan's company went public last month. Turns out that small startup was worth considerably more than anyone realised. Ryan's firm found out the hard way when they tried to court Ethan for a merger and got a polite but firm rejection. Ethan sent me the email thread. Ryan had included a personal note about how much he respected Ethan's work and hoped they could do business together. Ethan's response was professional and brief. Thank you for your interest, but I don't think our corporate cultures would be compatible. We're house hunting now, looking for something with land space for the garden. I've always wanted room for kids maybe someday. Ethan wants a workshop for his woodworking hobby. I want an office with good natural light. We want a place that feels like ours, built on our terms, full of the kind of love that doesn't need an audience. People talk about blood being thicker than water, but they forget the full quote. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The bonds we choose can be stronger than the ones we're born into. And sometimes cutting out the rot is the only way to heal. I don't regret what I did that Thanksgiving. I don't regret the confrontation, the public exposure, the burned bridges. What I regret is all the years I spent trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it freely. What I regret is believing that my worth was tied to their approval. What I regret is not seeing Lily's toxicity sooner, not protecting myself better from parents who valued appearances over authenticity. But I learned, I grew. I found people who love me for exactly who I am, mess and all. I built a life that doesn't require anyone's permission or validation. And honestly, I've never been happier. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic relationship even when it was with family? How did you know it was time? And what did you learn about yourself in the process? Drop your stories in the comments, because I think we all need to hear that we're not alone in this struggle. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of family drama, personal growth, and learning to put yourself first. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all, it's just living well. Blood might be family, but love is a choice, and I'm choosing myself.